And then my brothers, we were kind of coming up. They were both wrestling, and I was going to all the practices because, I don't know if you've been to, the kids' wrestling practices. The whole family gets dragged along and it's sitting on the side of the mats. And when you're young, you can only sit for so long, and all the kids just start running and playing, jumping on crash pads and wrestling around with each other. And I was good enough to wrestle with my brothers, and so my older brother wrestled. And then when my little brother started, I was like, wait, I kind of understood how my older brother could do stuff I couldn't do, but not my younger brother, especially because I could beat on him pretty good. And I told my parents I wanted to do it too. I think they were just like, oh, this isn't going to be good. And it was, they let me, and I didn't know if it was going to be short lived. They wouldn't buy me any shoes. I had to wrestle my Converse tennis shoes my first time out there. But I did pretty well and kept wrestling. They got me some shoes, and then that was all she wrote.
What did that's interesting, right? I understood I couldn't do things my older brother was doing, but what about the little guy? What the heck, once you got out there and actually you're in your Converse and you're on the mat, like the actual wrestling, did you just like fall in love with it immediately? What did you like about it? How did it feel?
Well, it kind of, it's what my family did in the winter. We're kids who did sports kind of year round, and during the winter time, that was wrestling time. I was also doing gymnastics, but on those nights, I was going to the tournaments. I was going, to the practices and then to the tournaments on the weekends with my brothers. And you're sitting there like all day, And Michigan's a big wrestling state. My first tournament I went to, I had 9 matches, and it didn't end until midnight, where they just keep wrestling because there's, I don't know, there's 80 kids in your bracket. It's one of those kind of crazy events. And so that was my first dip into wrestling. And so, but I ended up taking third, but I won my first 7 matches. And I think my parents did not know that was coming, and neither did anybody else who was watching. But it was an 8 and under bracket, and I was an 8-year-old, and I was so small. I think it was a little bit easier for me because a lot of the kids were a little younger, in all fairness. So some of them, when I was an 8-year-old, they were 7-year-olds and stuff. And so it was, I did pretty well. I won most of them, I think, by tech and pin, and I lost by some points in the other 2. But I remember that tournament because I wanted to come back, but there's a lot of things that hit the fan after that, because I don't know that everyone was ready for really to have a girl in the wrestling community at that time.
Okay, you said a lot of things hit the fan. Can you expand upon that and what hit the fan and how did that look?
People kind of went crazy. It was during that time. Like, I don't know if you guys would remember. These are the Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs match.
Sure.
This real women's lib thing that was kind of taking hold of the country, and it really made a lot of people fight back and forth about those ideas of in that time, women still couldn't get their own credit card, right? We're still in that phase. And so having girls like come into a boys sport and also win, it was just, it was a tough thing because it's girls against boys. It was hard. There was a lot of tears, and you just have to make the decision, what are we going to teach kids at this point? And are we going to kick her out because she makes everybody uncomfortable, or are we going to let her stay? And I was with a club that said, let her stay. Hey, you know what? If you're going to practice and you're doing the work, and you want to go up there, we don't care, just let her wrestle. And but that was not the way a lot of other clubs took it. I mean, people would scream at me and my parents, and there would always be hundreds of people around, like the match when I used to wrestle in a lot of the events. And then the AAU, when we went to the districts, I won the districts and the regionals, but they kicked me out of the state championship because they said girls were not allowed to compete, and I shouldn't have been allowed to compete in the other 2. And so we ended up going to court, and on a quick rapid action. That was kind of national news all over, and getting calls from all over in the New York Times and stuff. I was just a little kid, so I did not understand, just exactly what was happening, and I think a lot of people wanted something out of it, maybe a point to tell women where they don't belong, or to push women to say, well, you can do anything. I was just a little kid. I just liked to wrestle. I didn't understand it all.
You guys went
firefight at that time, yeah.
You went to court against the AAU?
Yeah, the AAU, because they were a private. My understanding of it, at least at the time, is that they were a private organization, so they can do whatever they want to tell people they can come in or not. There's no equal rights amendment, so you can kick women out, if you want. Just say no girls allowed, because that's just what we think. but they were holding the event at a public university that receives, federal funding. So it was one of the Title IX was one of those was used at that time actually, and part of my lawsuit, and we actually won. Things had kind of gone either way. There was another a big lawsuit going on at the time, actually in the town right next to me, where a girl had challenged the Little League, and so these were all big news things at the time. There was only one girl that was out, um, and she made a big stir and actually got to play. They ended up making her whole team forfeit because they had to choose kicker off or forfeit, and they were in the finals of I think it was the World Series or something, and it was a game never played. But it was a really kind of hostile time. I mean, it was all new ground, and I think when things are new and there's a lot of change, you ask people to change quickly. It's a tough ask.
Sure.
And but yeah, we took them to court, and we did win on that grounds, and so they did have to let me wrestle in the tournament, and so I wrestled in that tournament, which was the AAU Nationals, which is a massive event, kids event, and I wrestled both freestyle and Greco in that, and it was fun. It was there was a lot of media around there. It was really kind of stressful. But again, I was kind of a quiet kid, so I didn't really understand. I just kind of stuck with my parents, my team, and kept my head down and kept walking. But that all of the hoopla didn't really seem to have much to do with me personally. It was other people's agendas, right? I just wanted to wrestle.
Yeah. Do you think it was because you were a female, or do you think maybe it was because you were having so much success and you were good and you were beating a lot of boys? Like if you came in and just were losing every match, do you think they would have made as big a deal?
I think it was both, but the fact that I won is what made it just kept coming to I think was what made it a lot worse, right? And because there was just, because it's a tough situation, because I think we always tell little boys that hey, if you can't beat a girl, you're like a failure as a young man, right? And that's it's and having young kids have to deal with that, and that I think it was hard on I felt that, but what is the other lesson you're gonna teach young men, right? Oh, there's a girl who's out there and good. It makes you feel uncomfortable that she's good, so let's make sure we kick her out so you feel better about
Yeah.
you have to pick one of the two, right? And both of them are they're kind of a tough message, right? And I think they all have some growing pains, but I think things have definitely changed now. I see that, my daughters played, high school sports, and there was guys who came to the event, cheered on their girlfriends and their classmates, and I think if some of the big stars of women's sports came to a high school to speak, boys would ask for Venus Williams autograph and think it was pretty cool they had it.
Yeah.
Where that was not really a thing that young boys did at my age. Looked up to women who were female athletes and would say, I would, isn't she really good? Even the high end the high profile athletes, maybe the gymnasts from the Olympics or the tennis players back in those days. It just wasn't a thing where I think guys watched it. But I see men all over on the sidelines of their daughters playing sports now, going crazy just like they do for their boys, getting kicked out and everything else. It's okay. It's come a long way.
You said at the time when you went to court and all that, you're kind of a kid and you just wanted to wrestle, and you weren't aware of maybe the bigger picture of women in sports and all that. Right. When did you start to maybe understand that? Was it at some point while you're competing, or not till after you had finished?
Well, it was a lot. I think a lot later. As you get maturity, you start to understand the context of things, and how you understand things as an 8 or 9-year-old is really different as a teenager and as an adult. I remember my mom when they were telling me I had to leave the tournament. The guy kept telling my mom, girls can't wrestle. And I was so mad at my mom because I kept pulling on her shirt and telling her to say, tell him I won districts and regionals. Because I thought he was saying that girls can't wrestle, they weren't good enough or they get hurt. But I wanted to say, just tell him, because once he knows I've won that, then he's going to let me in. And my mom is shushing me because she understands that is not the conversation that was at hand. But I remember even just as a little kid being so bugged by her, God, just give him the right information. He'll let me go. And because I can. And later on, they didn't let me wrestle in junior high, and so it kept going. So it was a matter of deciding, do we have another court case? And I had my gymnastics coaches really telling me you have no future in this sport or where it's going to go, like and you're good enough at other sports, and why don't you just kind of move on? And it was starting in middle school, like in seventh grade. My older brother wrestled there. It was just I just decided I guess I will just do gymnastics because they won't let me, and I did, and it was unusual kind of experience because the coach who was there was a really well-loved coach. He was really nice to my brothers. My friend Zeke was on the team there, my little brother, and but the guy never spoke to me. He'd see me in the halls and turn his eyes away and just never. And I was an incoming regional national champ that was gonna wanted to wrestle for his team, but but then when nobody says anything and you just kind of keep going to school like the kids and no one brings it up and you kind of accept what is a normal thing that I guess if nobody's upset about it, and I do other sports, I guess this is just how life has to happen. And I stopped wrestling then in seventh grade. So but I didn't start wrestling again till I was 22.
You
And
went from like 13 to 22 without wrestling?
yep. Well, there was no opportunity. There was no girls wrestling in high school. They weren't allowed, and there's no college wrestling. There was no clubs. There was no. But Zeke had gone. My Zeke Jones had gone to the World Championships in '89 and came back. I had just moved to Phoenix and said, "Hey, there's girls in this World Championship. You got to get back in here." And I just and then I went in a couple days in the ASU wrestling room and got kicked around quite a bit for 5-10 years, but I learned a lot, and I ended up representing the U.S. on our team. But it was my old teammate from as a kid kind of getting me back, and he and Bobby Douglas came back in the ASU after the event and told me, and that's how I got back into it.
So from seventh grade till you were 22, did you like not even train or practice or not really wrestle?
Mm-mm. No, there's no place to go. There is no room. There's no. It, it's not like I wasn't going to a practice that was there.
Right.
There's no team. There's no practice. There's no invite. There's no tournaments to go to anymore. And so, but that's what kids, transition. The big bulk of our, especially back in those days, where the wrestling knowledge continues, is through the school systems, right? After
Yeah.
that, and in high school and then through college, which was the next transition. And but there is none of that offered, and that's changed, to a degree. It's still not the same for women and men in this country, of the type and the caliber of offerings, like Division I colleges and big schools and stuff. We're
Yeah.
not there yet, but things are moving in that direction, which is great. But it's hard, for us to coming out. If you ask most men who wrestled, what if we took away your junior high school experience and your college experience, all the coaching, you pay for your own school, and there's no club, no coach, and how good are you going to be in the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
There's training after that, but and by the way, there's no club program, and there's no, you just figure it out, that's what's offered to women. So for the women that I knew, and you spoke to one of my teammates, Christy Davies, most of us, we all came up through men's programs that kind of just let us in a back door at some point and got us in, and we started trading in that way. But it wasn't there were no girls programs, right? And
During this
there was no
time,
girls competition. Yeah.
like I assume you probably just figured that you weren't going to wrestle, like that was it for life, right? Like after seventh
Right.
grade in high school, you're just like,
Well, the message true, and it was true. There was no competition for girls. There was no, there was no tournaments. There's no college, right? There's no practice. And so maybe you could work hard to find another practice, but then you would just still be competing with boys, like up into through college. And if you had opportunities, maybe in other sports where you could represent your school or go to college or do something else, maybe on a club or, one of the Olympic sports, that maybe that'd be a wiser way to go, and I think that's, for what was offered at that time, it was the kind of the only choice. And it would have been nice if there was an opportunity in wrestling, because I think I was better at wrestling than I was the other sports. I was a good athlete, but
clearly.
that's just how it turned out. It's different now for girls, and they got a lot more choices on ways to figure things out,
Yeah.
what they want to do at this point.
So it sounds like Zeke saw that there was women's wrestling at the World Championships, came back and told you, what, you know,
Yeah.
when, I don't know, when he told you this, was it like, wow, cool? Or was it immediately like, I'm back, let's do it. There's somewhere for me to go. Like, and then like
I don't
getting
know if I
back on
knew
a
what to
mat,
think
was it
of
like
it.
riding a bike? Did it take a minute to remember how to do it? That's a long layoff.
Well, I went in, and so I talked about it, and it's because I was friends with my brother was on the ASU team, and Zeke, and I'd known most of those guys on the team because I used to go to spring break down and visit. I knew Rob Eider was a real good friend of mine from who was on the wrestled at Arizona State. He's a 105 pounder, and when I came down there, so Rob said, "Yeah, I'll take you in the room." And so it was sort of like just fun. Let's see where it goes. I had no idea what I would remember or not because I hadn't wrestled, but I've been watching a lot of wrestling. I knew the sport. My brothers wrestled, and I watched college wrestling, and my brother was wrestling at Arizona State, and so I followed. And when I watch a wrestling match, I know what's going on. I've been around wrestling since I was 3 years old, right? And
Yeah.
so when I walked back in the room and I wrestled with Rob Eider that day, it was unpleasant because there's I mean, if you haven't done something for 10 years, rusty is not even the word, just figuring out, wait, what am I doing again? And after rolling around a little, I think you realize, like anybody, when they go into a room, maybe when you're way over your head, it's one of those things you just make a decision, like, am I going to go back and get better so that doesn't happen to me again, or am I just going to quit right now because that's a bad idea? And
Yeah.
I think both of those would have been very, those are okay things to have thought from the experience. But I just wanted to go back. And so it was just slow training after that, learning and spending time with a lot of the guys on the team and coaching, and eventually starting to work out with some high school kids. And, and, uh, and that was, and that's how it all started. But
So you're 22 when you get back on the mat. Did you wrestle your first
yeah,
champion worlds at 22 or 23 or
yeah,
24?
23. Yeah. And so I trained for, it was about a year, of training. I was in the room like every day, from the time I started. I was just there all the time. I went and one of the Arizona State strength and conditioning coaches was there helping me, and I was training with those guys. And I just started contacting USA Wrestling because I wanted to go to the World Championship and say, when's the national championship going to be? And I was calling them all the time. I drove those poor guys crazy, because I said, when's it going to be? Oh, we'll let you know. And then, I said, we got to get this together. The nationals are coming. Like, we need to have a team set because it was going to be in August. And then they told me that USA Wrestling had decided that they weren't going to have a nationals, that we weren't going to send a team. And I was just devastated, and I kept calling and asking and saying why. And finally, it was actually the president, the director of USA Wrestling, called me and said, "Hey, listen, we had a meeting and we decided we do not support the development of women's wrestling in any way." And I was, crushed was not the word, because I'd been there every day training, really wanted to make this team. And so Art Martori and Joe Corso and Lee Allen, Olympia and Lee Allen, uh, came together, and they kind of did some talking behind some doors and said, "Hey, let's just get a team." They put a national championship together in a very short period of time, which was just kind of a combination world team trial, national championship at a tournament that Lee Allen had been a part of in Northern California. And everyone went up there, and we just kind of put together a team at the last minute. And we did get to go. It wasn't a funded team. Everybody paid their own way, but Rusty Davidson took that team over, and Joe Corso came and coached, and it was actually a great experience. And ever since then, we kind of just kept pushing through and making some kind of a national trial happen, and kept sending teams. And um, I had gone over and competed in Europe a couple times before that, getting ready. There were no tournaments in the United States, but I'd flown to Europe a couple times to wrestle in some European events, and and that was really great, walking into my first girls wrestling tournament. And there's hundreds of girls at it, and I'd never really spent time and seen other girls wrestling before. It was a pretty cool thing to see, and thinking, oh, this is a girls sport. It's not. It's just we're just behind. I see now. That's how
Had
we're
you
gonna do
ever
it.
had you ever wrestled with a girl practice or before that first tournament out in Europe?
Just Just one. One of the teammates at Arizona State, Marco Sanchez, had knew a wrestler, Afsoon Rashan Zamir Johnston,
Yeah.
who we all know, and so she came out. She was from Independence High School and came out and wrestled with me for the day. And I'd had people tell me for so long that, oh, girls can't wrestle except for you. And that's all I'd heard from people. But then I met this girl who would wrestling. She had gone to the World Championships the year before, and she came in. And Afsoon is just darling. She's the cutest girl that you can imagine. She had already done some modeling, and she's thin with this beautiful hair. And I'm just looking and thinking, all right. I probably have all the same prejudices as everybody else. And then, as soon as somebody said go, I remember her like collar tying me in the back, and she had a mean little headlock. And and there was no like, and it was just like wrestling everybody else. But I didn't, because she's kind of a thin, long, lanky. You think, gosh, am I going to hurt her? And that was not the case. I got a lesson of a lifetime. So don't ever think. Just because somebody's a little bit long that they're not strong, because she's good, and she's good. And we wrestled a lot. It was a good opportunity for me because girls have a little bit of a different feel, and and two, it's just a little, it's being able to really fight through my technique, which is something that I didn't always do when I was training with the guys who are on the Olympic team. As I got things, I was keeping good positions, but they're always giving you a little bit, like through drilling and and other things, if you're going to score through a point, and giving you really good resistance all the way. But when you get somebody who's fights you a little differently, or you're in a different position, you have to. It's a different fight, like fighting it with all of your might to the end with somebody who really doesn't want to go. It's a different feel than somebody giving you partially giving you the points. So it was good. It helped me a lot before I went out there. So that was my first, and then I went over to the tournaments overseas, and I had lots of different matches against women from other countries, and who wrestle really different too. It's a different international style, and we kind of all figure that out as Americans when we go and compete in different countries, have real different feel to them, right? But
Trish, I'm just really curious in kind of your re-entry into wrestling. I mean, you had all the success as a kid, and then I have to imagine from 13 to 22. I mean, your life had probably been on a different trajectory. You're thinking, I'm curious what you were thinking, where you were headed career-wise and what you were doing. And then as you kind of make the decision, all right, you know what, I'm going to commit to trying to be the best in the world. And then you're meeting this resistance from USA Wrestling. Like, what was that? Did that cause you to second guess your re-entry into wrestling at all? So yeah, I guess two parts. Where were you at in your life at age 22 when you got that call from Zeke Jones, and then yeah, did you second guess that decision when you had that resistance from USA Wrestling?
I don't know that I second guessed it. I was in, because I had been to these events, right? And so I know the World Championships is happening, and I know all the other countries are going. It was like, and all of the guys that were at USA Wrestling, it was all new, and they had to make these decisions, but I didn't know who any of them were.
Uh-huh.
I just know, and I should have, I've respectfully have known what each of these guys did, but they were just these guys on the other end of a phone
Yeah.
telling girls again that they can't wrestle, which was my whole experience ever since I was a child, right? And so I just was thinking, well, maybe they don't know. I mean, they haven't been to the tournaments. What did they? And so I always kind of was optimistic, think, well, if they only could see what I would see, I think that they just don't understand, and I can change their mind, which
Yeah.
which was the case sometimes, but some of it was not the case. They saw exactly what I see and still didn't want us out there. But things changed. Things changed over time, and I found sometimes you just keep showing up. It's kind of a trait that you learn in wrestling. You kind of keep showing up and you keep working hard, and you just you don't go away. And even if you're getting knocked down, stand back up and just show up again tomorrow at practice. And it's a value that you learn, and you hope maybe that'll be appreciated as you take it in other dimensions. And I think it was eventually, not in lifetime, maybe in 1990. I don't know that was appreciated very much then, but I think now when you look at the girls that are coming up, I think that most of the people at the high levels, when you watch our girls, they're proud of our national team, and they say those are our girls. They're those are American athletes, and they like seeing them do well. And I have no doubt that every single person in USA Wrestling watching Helen Maroulis win an Olympic championship is just got a tear in their eyes, and it's just 100% change, from maybe being against it and uncertain to 100% behind it. And it just took time. And it was time I didn't have, I was, I didn't want to, let's change it now, but it did something to take time, but what a wonderful outcome. We've got such a great team. And I think we got a chance of winning medals all the way across the board in the Olympics this year coming up.
Absolutely. Okay, I've had conversations in the past about women's wrestling and Tricia Saunders, and she was this, that, and the other, and this legend, urban myth, I don't know, always comes up like, this girl was so good. She used to beat Zeke Jones. She used to go toe-to-toe with Zeke Jones and beat him sometimes. And Zeke's coming out, from the world championships, like winning the worlds. And how often did you train with Zeke? Is there some truth to these stories?
Well, Zeke and I actually lived down the street from each other, so we were in the same station wagon going to every tournament the same way. We used to practice together every day. We competed in tournaments like every weekend. And I lost to Zeke, I think it's one match. He tells me it's two. He's probably right. Maybe I'm blocking it out of my mind because I don't like to lose. I don't know. But we wrestled a lot of the same kids coming up. Occasionally we were a weight difference, but around the same size. But I think we really helped each other be better wrestlers that were out. But we were in the same club. One of our coaches was Mark Johnson, who is an Olympian. And I remember looking at a picture of our little club coming up, and there's so many great wrestlers and things that came out of there. It's actually pretty amazing. Not just Zeke and I. There's a picture, and I look and I say, "Is that Stan Zezik?" And there's Stan Zezik. He was coming in and helping to coach like in one of the days back then. And it was a really very special place there in where we were. And but I don't think Zeke and I mean, we drove each other crazy, like back and forth, because we were friends, and then, but Zeke was a real competitive kid, and so whoever won, we'd end up real mad, and somebody crying, and not speaking to each other for 2 hours. But then, by the time we got in the car and went home, we forgot about it for the next week. But it was just like that. We were playing side lot baseball at my house,
Sure.
Somebody losing, somebody's smashing the bat. We were those kind of kids, saying, "I'm leaving."
Take my ball and I'm going home.
I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Yeah, we were all those kids. Yeah. But he was at my house all the time, and it was my little brother's really good friend, and he was a year between me and my younger brother, and so he was just like another brother to me. That you love him, but you're fighting with him half the time. That's just how it is.
Yeah. So obviously Zeke would go on and wrestle in the senior men's worlds and have success.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And was very supportive of you. And you said Bobby Douglas was pretty supportive. Mm-hmm. Did you have much interaction with, like, we'll call it the national team, the men's national team, or most, a good number of the men's freestyle wrestlers? And if so, what was that like? Or did they support, or did some do the opposite?
I would say about 90% of them were hugely supportive, and they were actually really great and really helpful. Not just the guys too on my team, but on Team Foxcatcher too, which was our rival team, was a lot of the athletes that were hugely helpful to me. And guys who are the best in the world would come out and say, "You know what, I'll help you." And they had nothing to gain from that, just out of the goodness of their heart. And it was a privilege like I had never known, being the only one had all of these. There was disadvantages and, of being the only one in my area. And there were other girls that were coming up. We were also spaced apart. But the men were hugely generous and supportive and just great. It's where I learned everything I know from, and I'm thankful for it all the time. I think of that opportunity of just people saying, "Hey, you want to spend an hour, like have a free tutorial with anybody coming up?" Guys like, Joe Gonzalez and my husband, all of the guys from the ASU team. Tim Vanny wrestled with me all the time, and Rob Eider, but Dave Schultz and Valentin Jordanov and Ed Giese came and coached us. These are the Foxcatcher guys, just were massively helpful for us and as a team, but just so giving of their time, and they're technically so fantastic. It's just it's a treat just to think of all the time that I got to spend with them and just learn a little something here and a little something there that you can take with you. It's a great experience.
You said like 90% of them were like super supportive. Was there a 5 or 10% were the opposite? Did you feel any resistance
from within? There's a couple that were tolerant, and there's a couple that were tolerant, and then they just but not disrespectful. There's one or two that I heard said things, never said anything to me, but it's a small circle. If you talk some smack, someone comes in, hey, you want to know what somebody said, because there are a bunch of guys on your team, and so I'd hear it. But you know what? You always hear somebody who's being a jerk in any room you are, and when you go to the Circle K or Target, or you know what I mean, or
Sure.
every day you're out and you see one in every crowd, and so I didn't really think too much of it.
Yeah.
And some coaches, you'd hear it, and I just said, well, that's where they are. But when you're training that hard and you're so busy, I don't know that you have the space in your mind to really think about that stuff so much. And my whole wrestling career, I had such people telling me such polar opposite things, like, sure, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you don't deserve to be here. It's all on the same day. You just kind of have to let it go. Just go to practice and do what you need to do. Because I wasn't really that involved in any of that to a point. It just people getting in the way of letting girls wrestling. I'd always try to stand up and have a voice in that, and I think I did. And that was hard. That was not the fun part of wrestling. I'm glad it happened in the end, that girls get to wrestle now. But that was not like a position I ever would have chosen. I would have liked to have somebody else do that for me. That would have been much better.
Sure. To the competition part of this, how did your first Worlds go? How did it go? Like the actual wrestling?
Well, I had won in the two events that I'd gone, and I wrestled against somebody that I'd beaten actually pretty handily, and I dislocated my shoulder in the first. That is not a comfortable injury. That hurt a lot, and but there was one of the athletes that was there, who was a world champion from Norway, was also a physical therapist, put my shoulder back in for me. And she's still, Ina Barley, a great friend of mine still today. I'm still thankful for that. Wow. I went home, I had to get a surgery on it. And so that was not exactly how I wanted things to go. But I came back after that, and it was within 4 or 5 months after surgery, was back in competing in some events overseas with some of my teammates, and it all worked out. I got banged up a little bit, so I came home on Team Sorry. That was, everybody's been in that part of the bleachers before. That's no fun.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. But then the first world championship, I won. I lost in the second world championship to an athlete from Japan who was really good, and she just beat me. She just was a better wrestler than me. So I asked her to come live with me and train with me, which she did. And she became like my little sister, and we trained together for a long time. And I brought her in, and it's Miyu Yamamoto. Her brother Nori Yamamoto was an MMA fighter in Japan, and Seiko Yamamoto actually became our national team coach and in the United States for a while. So
wow.
And
so. Okay, you just beat me. Will you come live with me? I feel like most people would be like, no. No. Why would I do that?
I needed a training partner, and I wanted to have a girl as a training partner. And you always want to pick a training partner that's better than you, right?
Yeah.
Did you? What you're supposed to do? And I said, and so she came out, and it was kind of an interesting twist. Her dad had competed for the Japan in the Olympics, but he also used to wrestle in college in the United States at Eastern Michigan University, which is the university I sued. Right? And I love the university; they're good. It's just they were the one that were hosting the event and kind of got caught up in the middle of that whole thing with the AAU. But one of the coaches out there, he knew Ernie Gillum, who was my brother's coach. He wrestled at Iowa State. I get Ernie right. But he was my brother's coach in high school. And so we had this kind of connection that came around, and it ended up her coach in Japan was a guy who my brother went on a Japanese exchange once, and was a guy who'd spent time at our house as a kid. So it's a really weird thing that all the way across the world, we actually had these multiple family connections from the time that, from even before she was born with her family. So it was a good fit, and we trained together for a while. Miyu went on, and she won 3 world titles herself, and so we actually met in the world championships in 1998, which was really hard.
In the finals?
In the finals, yeah.
And who won?
Yeah. I won a 1-1 overtime tie on criteria, so a little bit of a heartbreaker.
Did you have to go live with her after that?
I went and I stayed with her I went out and visited her and stuff for a while. But she's one of my favorite people on the planet. And to me, she's still family.
Was Japan? They're obviously very good at women's freestyle wrestling. Were they like that back when you were competing in the World Championships?
Yes, they were always the team to beat. Yeah.
Why? What about them back then, and maybe even today, if you want to try to tackle on that?
Well, when I first went to Japan, I remember they just had girls wrestling. It was already established, and I went and when I went to practice, I was practicing at the university. So they had girls at the university, kind of their equivalent of Division I wrestling. They had them in the room since 1990, and so with the best coaches and the wrestling freestyle, and so they had the system set up, and they had a national team coach, and they trained, and they just they did everything that we were doing, just 20 years behind, and they've had a whole funnel filtering in, and in Japan, the Olympic sports are really important. It was weird getting off a plane and having paparazzi follow us, like Miyu, because she was really famous over there, and thinking, this is just bizarre. I don't get a ride home from the airport, and,
Yeah.
but
Just lost
yeah,
my.
they just
Oh,
set up a system. They trained them with good coaches, and that's the formula for everybody, right?
yeah. I mean, could you imagine a world where today an American beats a Japanese wrestler and then she says, "Hey, will you come live with me?" I feel like no way, right? Like it's way too competitive.
Yeah.
Or am I wrong?
Well, I think her dad wanted her to be able to come out and train like with some of the styles out there, to work with guys like Bobby Douglas and be in a room like that, and also to be able to come back and maybe train, because we were going to go at different weights, and then to train and maybe not in Japan with that, because she still had she had to beat the people out of Japan to make a team, which is actually a hard thing. And I think he thought I'd be a good workout partner for her.
How would you
Yeah.
describe how would you describe your style? Somebody's never seen you wrestle.
Well, I was kind of a little tall for my weight class, and I'm flexible but pretty strong and long-legged, and so I wrestle more of a European style, with a straight leg and bent, which was, I think, because I wrestled with guys for so much, I just know how to hand fight. You had to do a lot of hand fighting
I
to keep,
bet.
the college guys and the national team guys off your legs, and so but I like to tie. I used to use the underhook a lot, but I also learned how to throw. And when I was and so my favorite technique, I think, from the shot, was a high crotch and a series off underhook. And I usually found to be pretty successful with it. But I'm a kind of wrestler who just never backs up ever. And so back in those days, it was really easy to get it. I was really good on top at turning people, and so if I could hand tie and control a tie and push people around, if I couldn't get a shot off of somebody being defensive, I always knew I could get them put down. And back in those days, if you didn't stay active, you got put down in a parterre position.
Uh-huh.
And I used to win a lot of matches like that. The first shot, if I didn't, sometimes they'd go in just a regular match, like on leg attacks, but if not, and it started to something not happening, I don't think I ever got put down ever first in my career. And if I could turn somebody, then when you're up by a couple points, 2, 4, or even 6 points, it's a whole different match. As somebody coming, you're back on your feet. Now somebody's coming and they're not holding you off. And it was a strategy that worked well for me. The rules have changed though a little bit. You don't get people put down, which
Right.
I had to take a different edge. But those were the rules back in those days, and I used those to my advantage. I spent a lot of time wrestling in parterre every day of turning people, and I got pretty good at turning most people all the time in most matches. So.
Was the rule set pretty consistent throughout your whole career? Because I know there was the ball draw era. There's the way it is today. There was prior to that probably similar.
No,
more
they
similar
changed
to
them.
rules.
And they changed weights and weigh-in rules, and weigh in one day, 3 days, and weigh in every day, and then weigh in right after you get off the mat. You had 1 hour after you got off the mat to make weight, so you had to be competing on your weight, but they did change rules sometimes of the interpretation of the parterre and a slip, and then the clinch came in like at the end, which came out and went, and but they still did put people down like through my whole career, which is really different now. And I like watching the new rules today. I do like it, but we did have to adjust to that sometimes, of what they would, when they call, and how the way they called edges and different fleeing rules, of where you had to I mean, you couldn't move away like on the mat, like down at the bottom. You get called for fleeing. They changed and trying to make things more exciting. But I think that they've done some really great changes to the rules. I like to watch the matches now, a lot more scoring,
Yeah.
And I like the 2-point takedown a lot. I think it's great.
Love it. Love it. Huge fan.
Yeah.
What did you like about wrestling? Did you like that you were good? Or, I mean, obviously everybody likes to win and be good, but like, what was it about wrestling that like, gymnastics is cool, but like, I'm into wrestling?
I don't know that I'm different than anybody else. I think the combat sports are a little different. It's a short time of trying to problem solve in live time
Yeah.
is something that I just think is it's a really fun thing to be a part of, right? Just trying to figure things out, and I like the physical nature of it and how challenging it is. And I think when you really like it, you just end up thinking about it all the time of something you could do differently, something you'd write, you ask questions and driving down the road and going sideways because you're guessing while you're driving. Everybody
Yeah.
does that. I think I think wrestling is one of those things that you just try. You either really like it or you really don't, right? And
Yeah.
most of the time, a wrestling room, more than half the people are gone by the end of the season because it's just too hard. And but if you like that challenge and you like that push where you're thinking you can't, and you push yourself through something and you can, like of what that gives you back, and it's good. But I was always like a real competitive person, and so I like sports. I like any kind of game, and my brothers are the same way, and the whole neighborhood I grew up with was like that, and so we always like playing any kind of game against each other and kind of going hard and going a little crazy. I like it, and so
How did you handle losing? You said you're very competitive. Some people.
I don't like it.
I know you don't like it, but I mean, did you go in the corner and cry? Did you kick over a water cooler? Did you just want to be by yourself?
No.
Did you?
I want to be by myself, and when I was a little kid, like I cried, but when I was an adult, I had no problem, keeping my chin because you're on the national team, you owe that respect when you're out there. I was never mad at an opponent I lost to. I think I only lost once where I kind of got really ripped off in a call, and I was really upset
What
about
happened?
that. But I just was winning 3-2 and holding somebody down, and they took the points away in the end. And I holding somebody in a near fall, and it was kind of a weird position. And they said, no, that's not your near fall, it's there, and so I ended up losing 2-1. Like this is afterwards, and they let it go, and they just changed the points later. I was in another country. Sometimes that happened. I was not happy because I'd gone a long way, and I didn't have a coach or anything in my corner, and you're just wrestling by yourself in a foreign country with nobody with you, and it's it was not. I wasn't happy about that, and so I didn't blow any tantrum or anything, but I remember being maddened rather than sad after that one match. But that can happen to you when you go, and it's your own fault for not. You need to win by more than a point, right? You're wrestling in a different country. We all should know that. So
Yeah.
it's and I didn't do that. So it's what it comes with the game, right? But I always, I was really hard on myself. I did not, if I lost in some, I trained really hard for those things to have everything you work for months and months or a year come down to a 1 6-minute go to figure it out. When it doesn't turn out, it's a pretty big closure, because it's done. You're done. You don't win. And I don't think I never and I lost earlier in a tournament like once. I never did well, like twice had an opportunity to wrestle back for third and didn't win. I think I just kind of fell apart because I lost. And I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I was like that. I wasn't somebody who was able to pull it back together like Lincoln McElravy did, come back and for a bronze and
Yeah.
and those things. I think that's a really hard thing to do. And I think I wasn't the competitor I should have been to be able to shake it off and just say next match in short time, 30 minutes, be ready to go. I wasn't. And that's a big regret I have in my career. I was there for one color medal.
Yeah.
And then I was not that happy, which isn't, I don't think is good. Everybody who's got a bronze to this day, I still stand up and clap and think more power to you because I know what that takes because I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a bronze medal in senior level. I don't have one.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for those athletes. I mean, a huge amount.
Yeah.
But I'd make it to the bathroom before I started crying.
All right.
I got the stall closed and I didn't
Yeah.
make noise or anything. But I was pretty disappointed. I don't like losing.
Sure.
So Tricia, when you started your senior level career, you had to like get on the phone with USA Wrestling every day just to get yourself and the other women in the US a chance to compete. By the time you had gotten to the end of your competitive career, had the climate around women's wrestling changed much? And if so, what kind of developments did you notice in those few years?
Yeah, it changed a lot. You know, it was a little bit at a time, and I think it's just the change is hard, you know. But by the time that we got up to the end, the women's team did have there was a national team coach, and they did, you know, pay for the women to go on to the world championships and to on a couple of women's tours. And you know, we sent referees and everything that were with it, and just like some of the guys that there was training camps and still, you know, wasn't there weren't as many girls as coming up because it was still there was no real place for them to go back to and train. They were training out of, you know, high school places or small clubs, and because there wasn't university systems that, you know, that had club teams that had women as big parts of them yet. That has developed like slowly over time, but it's come. And now a lot of universities, they have women on their clubs teams, and also in the regional Olympic training centers are great. They have women in them now. So it was still slow coming. We didn't have because of that the training situation on the ground level, at the grassroots level, or, you know, on the local level, still wasn't there enough. But eventually, near the end of my career, they started. I mean, after I stopped competing, they started to have in the at the OTC, they had a women's resident program, which I think really helped a lot. And with the hiring of Terry Steiner, things went a long way. And it's just developed, you know, just exponentially from there, with the getting into the high school systems where then the girls can go and try it out. You find the girls really like it. Either you play recreationally or, you know, just through high school and have a good time with it. But it always has those great athletes bubble up. And this is why we have the numbers now and the depth, because expansion of high school has been great.
As you're going through your career, did you know this development we're talking about of the sport in general for women? Was it something you gave much thought to, and like what it's like today and what it may be like in the future, or today, or, you know, in 2021? Like, did you give much thought to the future of the sport? Were you so in the present just trying to be a wrestler?
It was two things at the same time, because I wanted to go and compete. You know, I'm hugely patriotic. I wanted to wrestle for the United States in these events. I wanted to be a part of a good team where we all could come over and make a show and have that whole experience just as much. And so anytime I saw my teammates win, I did. It's the greatest to be a part of a team like that, right? You know, and it's like you said, Super Bowl last night, that whole team effort is it's just a magic thing to be a part of. And so, I mean, I guess maybe some of that in some way was selfish, that I wanted a team for myself, but I wanted to see that happen for all my teammates. These women were my friends, right? You know, and they were fighting their own little battles in each little corner of the whatever state they were from, and had the same kind of, you know, struggles in high school. And then they had these great heroes that were behind them, and you know, their list, you know, the people who helped you make it everywhere, that you owe everything to, and the people that are like, oh God, here he comes, the thorn in your side. Well, that's true with everything, right? You know, just like, but we all had our mentors and again, our heroes, and a lot of those folks are still out there that made it happen. And it was like a team of all of this network of people all wanting to see the same thing, even though there were folks that were different, that didn't want to see that. All of us who did, we knew that we had a good thing going, and that we wanted to pass something on to the next generation of girls. And I wanted to see the United States really be a force in these tournaments, and hopefully eventually in the Olympic Games, which we are now. And
Yeah.
I love that maybe I gave a little bit to that, but it wasn't just me. It was a whole bunch of folks, you know, that kept showing up. All of those women that were on my team with me, Shannon Yancey, Shannon Williams Yancey, and Andrea Carstens Yamamoto, and again, Afsoon that we brought up. Debbie Weiss Hubley was you know, my another one of my training partners back, and it just Marie Ziegler Prado, all these folks from way back in the day, Christy Schultz, there's lots of us, and we all had a great time together, being even sometimes the hard things when we were together fighting the hard things. It was all kind of good, and it was a team building experience in its way.
Did you ever like talk with these women that you just mentioned by name, like about the struggle of women's wrestling, especially back then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
They were all on it because we were on the phone and saying, "Oh, we got off this call and we had this meeting and we're going to get it." And I mean, we talked to each other all the time. I mean, they were the ones who had to know if we got something done, and eventually some of them. Shannon ended up getting on the athletes advisory committee. Efsoon has participated in a lot of things. They were a little younger than me at the time, is I think why I was involved in a lot of it a little bit more, being in my young 20s versus them being teenagers. Just coming out, Efsoon was just kind of coming out of high school. So there's a big difference for someone who's graduated college and just graduated high school in terms of what you think of how do you step up into these adult-like things. But just in short time, they all stepped up into all of those roles and did all the same things. And it was just an age thing, but their parents were wonderful people. And, Christy Stenglein, Tumarano is, Davies now she's done a lot, like in her right of filling in all those gaps as they come. Everybody did. Lots of women. It wasn't just me.
Sure. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and it was like being in a foreign country with no coach. Like going to a tournament, okay, even traveling by yourself is one thing, but like I'm just trying to picture like one, just knowing where to go and where to sign up and all the logistical things, and then two, like who do you warm up with? Who do you talk to during the day? What do you do when obviously you can't do anything when it's a crappy call and there's nobody in your corner? That just
right.
Like even little league tournaments, they don't let them go without a coach.
I know, but sometimes somebody from one of the other teams, they'd like send a coach, or like somebody, if I was one of the girls from one of the other teams would coach me, or sometimes one of the other coaches from, I was competing against somebody like some from France or something, one of the Swedish coaches would jump in and just be in my corner and give me the water. And sometimes they didn't speak English. It was okay.
Yeah.
I just did the best that I could. People were really extremely hospitable to me and really, really nice. I'd never felt like on my own in those places. Sometimes one of the tournaments, I remember I didn't have anybody to warm up with, so I did gymnastics. I tumbled, and that was always a really good warm up for me. And getting going, I run and I do some drills on my own, and then I tumbled. I actually did a lot before my tournaments. Is one of the ways I warmed up. I did gymnastics, and so, my experience wasn't bad with it. People will always pick me up from the airport because you're one person, right? And kind of easy to take care of when you get over. They'd get a hotel for me, and a lot of times the other country would even pay for it. But I often would have some of the girls from the team or even other people just take me around and show me a city, and I had a great time. And I go out with the girls afterwards, and I made a lot of friends that way because they were really happy to have other countries come to their event, and to help to make the event go. So the tournament organizers were always happy to have, other foreign wrestlers come. And so it ended up, it was actually a really good experience going by myself in that way. It was a little nerve wracking because I'd never left the country, been to Europe, never been to Europe before, and just landing and saying, I hope they pick me up.
But they did.
And they always did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they always did.
So, the women's wrestling is in a much better spot than it was when you were competing. It's an emerging sport at the Division I level. What is your, if you could take the magic wand and make the rules for women's wrestling, where would women's wrestling go in the next quad, in the next 4 years in the United States and maybe worldwide?
Yeah. Well, I think the way things are going worldwide, there's more and more teams and good wrestlers with depth in every country that's participating. And we're meeting some of the numbers like of the men's countries now. I think they're just headed on exactly the right trajectory. I hope with women's wrestling coming in as Division I emerging sport, it'll be great to see it get into these Division I schools where people have high level coaches and can get some scholarship and train in a way with all the facilities that Division I teams have to offer. But the other schools that are out there now, they're doing a good job with athletes as well. That Division I experience, I think, when you start to get just the support and the high level coaches that can afford to be there, at a Division I program, it's just going to change. The training opportunity will at the bigger schools with more majors offered to the girls too. Sometimes I think there's great opportunity offered at small schools all over the country, but sometimes people have a specialized major where you kind of have to make a decision that if you're in a smaller school, they may not have an engineering program or this, the certain type of thing that you're trying to get into, or the research opportunities that the bigger schools have. Um, some small schools do, but not all of them. And so I think the more variety of choices that women have for competition and training, the better, and especially with academic opportunities, because a lot of the girls that participate in all sports, they're pretty darn smart. They got good grade points.
Yeah.
And they're thinking in two different lines of both an athletic career and a real world career. So I think you can't have enough educational opportunities across the board. But
Agreed.
I'm really impressed with what a lot of the NAIA and D3 schools have done. Really fantastic, nice coaches who've done nothing but give and give and give to both the men and the women on their teams. And so, and I got a chance to meet all these coaches, just wonderful people. Just when you walk away and you just think, gosh, I'm just so glad I met that human being.
Right.
and when I see these coaches, but wrestling people, I say that most of the time. Wrestling people are good people, good people.
Agreed. 100%.
I hope we see those developments too. I agree. That's going to make wrestling on the women's side even stronger. And I'm also really excited about the Captain's Cup. Is there one match in particular this weekend that you're really hoping to see? One that if you could like make sure that match happens, that you're really looking forward to.
I haven't thought about that in that regard. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of these girls wrestle against each other because they're Americans. I'm looking forward to seeing like the number ones go out there and do the things that they do, but actually the depth that we have and the challenge of them. Because once you're number one, everybody watches your stuff and they know you, right? And I think about the 4 times that I won a world championship. Interesting enough, I was not the favorite in any of those world championships. Even when I came in as a 3-time world champ, there was 2 5-time world champs in my weight, one from Japan, one from China, right? And so I was not. And when I went in the other time I wrestled Miyu, I was a 2-time. She was a 3-timer. The first time I won one, I had to take out a 3-time world champ to win that one, and the other time I had to take out a reigning world champ from Japan. So I was never the favorite going in, right? And so I like that, even though for as much as you won, that's not what I walked into in my favorite achievements. And so I look at these young ones coming up and saying everybody's got someone to get, and let's go do it. And then these our number ones who are so fantastic. I just I want to see them shine. So I don't have one match. I want to watch every single one of the matches. I can't wait. Out there and coaching the Team Miracle is where they go. I'm going to be sitting on the other side of the mat with my popcorn, and just loving every minute of it. Just,
I got a question.
Yeah.
Oh, the Captain's Cup. What kind of coach are we going to see out of you? You see some coaches who are just kind of in the corner, kind of watching. You see some coaches who are like spastic and they jump up and down and they yell and they are like, what kind of coach are you going to be?
I think, especially since these are not my coaches, my kids that I am coaching every day. I guess they're adults now. Everyone's a kid to me because I'm old. Sorry about that. But as they come out, I think the best thing that you can do is make sure that in that 6 minutes that they're wrestling their match. I've done a lot of scouting, and there's a few things you can go, but you can't recoach somebody to a whole different style before they come out there. And just making sure, I think, and what coaches have helped me with the most, and I remember it because you already know how to wrestle, right? You're not going to learn any new things when you're out there, but making sure that you are the best that you can be, and you're actually thinking wisely and smart time in the duration of the match. And that's actually a really hard thing to do sometimes, to make sure that your attention isn't right in, to say a few small things and make sure you're watching this hand, a couple things you're over to make sure you're securing the tie that you have. And just on transitions, making sure people are paying good attention, so you're not giving up points that you don't need to if there's a mistake that's been made or a point that's given up, and to keep going, with LaForman, somebody of the time, but also just really empowering the athlete to make sure that they have that confidence to keep going with the best wrestling that they have in that moment. And I've had coaches do that for me, and I remember those moments of some of them just helping me refocus. I didn't know I wasn't focused until they told me, hey, you had to get up, and just feeling kind of your focus zero in and saying, I think that's so awesome that that coach saw that in me, because I didn't feel it, and if I can have that type of effect on an athlete, I tend to, I don't scream at athletes when they're out there. I didn't like it, or out. I just, I think positive empowering, like very direct messages are the most helpful for most athletes. But I cheer pretty loud when something's going good. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
I hope all
yeah.
my athletes know that I'm 100% in their corner. And for that 6 minutes, there's nothing I want more than to see them win. So
I think these ladies are going to be.
That's gonna be fun.
I think they're gonna be super excited to be coached by you. Like I said at the beginning, top of the hour, you know, one of the pioneer of women's wrestling in the United States. I know you blocked off an hour. We're 3 minutes overtime, so I know you got a busy schedule and lots of appointments to get to today. But I'll give you the final word before we get out of here. Anything you might want to say?
Well, I just hope everyone tunes into this Captain's Cup. I think it's going to be great wrestling and a great time to showcase our a lot of potential future Olympians. A lot of them are going to be there, and to get a little taste of what's coming up, maybe in the Olympic Games coming up, is really a treat. And so it should be a great event. And we got a lot of good coaches that are coming, fantastic athletes. I just hope a lot of people tune in and watch and enjoy it as much as we're going to.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for it. Excited for the event. Excited to see you out there. And again, appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today. It was awesome to hear about your story.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could do this for another 5 hours and it's still just barely scratch the surface. But
well, you guys showing the interest in it. I think it's great. I love seeing reporters ask all of these young athletes just great, good wrestling questions, because we didn't always get them back in the day. Why are you doing it? We're always a community interest story rather than a sports story. And so seeing you guys doing your job just great with these young women, for all of us, it's just fun to say, isn't it great how these reporters are these days with these athletes, asking them all the right questions and what they deserve. I really appreciate it more than you would know.
You bet. All right. Well, you have a great day. Thanks so much. And we'll see you this weekend. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye now. See you this weekend. Bye-bye.
Oh, what an awesome show. What an awesome guest, man. I know she's got stories for days. And like I said, we could probably go on forever, but unfortunately, she's got a job.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
not unfortunately, you know what I mean?
Imagine losing in the World Finals and then you say, hey, come coach me, or losing. I can't remember if it was World Finals, but
there was
World Finals.
Yeah,
come live with me, and
I'll beat you,
and we'll train together. And then yeah, she ends up flipping the script. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about the Captain's Cup. I mean, I think not only, like Tricia said, the depth that we have in the U.S. is going to be on display, but the format we saw at the RTC Cup, these 6-match duels. Anything can happen, and it just creates high drama. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. It's going down this Friday. This Saturday and Sunday. The America's Cup is Wednesday and Thursday. A lot of wrestling going down this week. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back right here tomorrow. So see you then. Thanks.